Tube. This is Gem Stitch here for my July update, which of course is late, but only just. It's the 2nd of August. So I hope everybody had a good July, and I hope everybody will continue to have a productive August as well. So firstly, thank you to everybody that returned to watch my next vlog update. I really do appreciate your support, as I've mentioned before, so thank you for coming back. And for any new subscribers that may just be coming across me or FlossTube for the first time, hi, please feel free to leave a comment if you've got any questions or anything like that, and I do try to respond as much as possible, and obviously if there's any left over I will go back and respond to those. So yeah, I've had a very busy, productive month in July. Still going through a little bit of a limbo stage, as in life update. Lots of things could be happening, changing, moving, so at the moment I'm using my stitching as my chill out time. So I'm not going to talk really about anything to do with that. I'm only going to talk about anything lovely like stitching today. The first thing I'd like to say is I do apologise about the lighting. I know people say don't keep making apologies in videos. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to control the weather, and it truly is the colour grey today, and grey is my favourite colour, but not necessarily outside and not necessarily when you're trying to record a video. So I will do my best. I've got every light on, so if I've got this weird halo above my head, I'm afraid there's not too much I can do about that. I've literally got everything that I can possibly turn on. So back to the more interesting things. So July for me was a focus, for my focus piece, was work on a project, the Patriotic Sal. So I follow the Stitch Mania Sals, which is of course a group on Facebook that have lots of different stitch alongs, which is what a Sal is. I have lots of different stitch alongs that you can participate in, really sort of friendly and open, and your style can fit in a lot of different categories if you so choose to stitch along. This month's stitch along was Patriotic Sal in July. So for me, I focused on my work in progress that I already had started, and I'd started earlier in the year in my History in Stitches Sal, which was the Restoration Sampler. So I picked that up. I haven't got an old picture of what it looked like before I started, where I last left off, but this is what it should look like. Now this I got off of a DVD because the Sampler and Antique Needlework Quarterly is no longer available, it's no longer being published, but you can pick up past copies. Obviously actually the actual copy itself, I would probably refer to eBay or Amazon for those, or you can actually buy like compilation DVDs which have all the copies loaded on there, so that you can go back at your leisure and just print out what you need when you need it. So that's what I did with this one. So I think, to be honest, as with a lot of needlework, and you'll see the light change, as with a lot of needlework, pictures don't do it justice, plus crappy printer. So there's this sort of mixture of the two, but this is what it should look like. So that's the Restoration Sampler. It's by Sally Hesketh. It's not a reproduction, it's an idea of what the restoration, what they think, or what she thinks, her interpretation of what possibly a sampler would have looked like around 1660. Now, for those of you that are unaware, it's called the Restoration Sampler because it's referring to the monarchy restoration. So that's the British monarchy, or the English monarchy, restoration of Charles II. Charles I, his father, was beheaded, and we, for a short period of time in history, in the whole scheme of things, we had a Lord Protector, which was Oliver Cromwell. And Charles II, obviously, Charles II was technically the blood heir to the throne, but as we know, we had a Lord Protector for a while and not an actual monarchy. That sort of panned out. I mean, if you're interested, you can look up how Charles II come to the throne and all the different things that were going on at the time in European history as well. That would have been the time of Louis XIV in France. So there was lots of different things all going on at the same time. So, but yeah, so this is it. Obviously, in England, it would have been quite dangerous to have anything that showed your allegiance to the monarchy hanging in your house, because it was showing your allegiance, whereas obviously there was a Lord Protector, so therefore you would have been you should have been following him. So you know, this is an idea of what it may have looked like before. So that's that. And this is what it looks like now. So I have actually finished this piece. So you've got Charles II, you've got the Boscobel oak. This has got some speciality stitches in it, but please don't be put off. Some of these speciality stitches I hadn't done before, and they're so easy, these particular ones, that, you know, if you was thinking, oh, I was going to do it, but not really, don't really want to do speciality stitches, there's actually not that many. It is mainly cross stitch, so please don't be put off by that, because there's really not that many, and they're not that hard, the ones that are in here. I was a little bit like, oh, I don't know whether I want to spend time doing special, but actually I really enjoyed it, and I like the different textures that some of them have got. So yeah, it was definitely worth doing. So now this was charted for anchor threads. I did convert them over to DMC where I could. I believe there was 2 threads that I couldn't do that with because there was no DMC equivalent, so therefore I used the anchor ones. What I will do is that I will put that information in the information box down below. You should be able to access that depending on what device you've got. It's usually just underneath the title at the bottom of the screen. There should be a little arrow, upside down triangle, and if you click on that, it will say something like show more, and you click on that and there should be all the information in regards to things I've discussed within this vlog. So hopefully that helps. So the eagle-eyed among you may have noticed that I'm actually kind of missing a band here, so I'll show you. Actually put it back in it, but it's just this band here, and it says wrought in 2000, and obviously in this case it says 1, but it would have said 17, obviously. Sally Hesketh. Now, had this been a reproduction sampler where you're literally reenacting, like you're creating the original sampler, to me it would be important to obviously add the person that designed it and the original date and things like that. Obviously that wasn't the case with this. The idea was that you could put your own name and what date you did it in, and therefore I wasn't that worried about it having this band. I don't necessarily want it that big. I wasn't bothered about having my piece named like that on the bottom. So although I've signed off my piece, I've done it delicate. So it's just here, which is enough for me. Now, excuse me, when it comes to framing, if it works out that it's better for me to, if the frame comes real close, then what I'll do is I'll unpick that and just put it in here somewhere, fit them in, actually into sampler itself, but yeah, it might be a better angle actually. So the fabric that this is stitched on is 32 count vintage Dune by Zwaigart. It was recommended for a 28 count, and you can definitely, obviously I did, you can definitely stitch it on a 32 or possibly smaller. The only thing I will say is that in certain cases, I'm collapsing, hold on. In certain cases, there's a, sorry, I think I might have dropped a frame there. Start again. So I was saying about the 32 count and the 28 count. It's recommended on 28 count, and it says to use 2 threads throughout. Now obviously if you're going to stitch it on 32 or smaller, then there's going to be certain stitches like the eyelet stitches, you're not going to be able to do that with 2 threads. So it'll be too bulky. So you can see actually in this corner there were certain ones where I actually did little trial runs and tests to see whether 2 was okay or whether I needed to go down to 1. So just bear that in mind. I think if you stitched it on the recommended fabric, which would be 28 count, you shouldn't have a problem at all. But I preferred to have it a little bit smaller on the 32. So yeah, so obviously in some cases I stitched with 1 thread rather than 2 to prevent it from being too bulky. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was really nice. It's got I actually like the colours as well. In the picture it looked very brown and more gold, but it's actually much more green, and I quite like that. I quite like that it's refreshing in some ways. Brighter than I expected. So yeah, that's my finish of my patriotic sow and my historical sow. So that was really, really good to get those done. Also, I also had 2 fully finished. I haven't finished the bride. I know some people was interested in seeing it framed. I do have a frame. I haven't actually got around to framing it yet. So when I do that, that'll be something that I can show you next time. So hopefully that will be done. But I do have 2 fully finished. The first one was for the summer. Is it summer equinox? No, what am I saying? This one's for like early harvest, so that was actually started yesterday. I haven't actually, I would go into more detail, but I haven't actually set up any of my table or anything like that yet because I'm painting, repainting pretty much the whole house, and I'm not going to put stuff out that I'm going to have to take down and stuff. So but I hope as soon as I redesign my little table, my stitching table, of course I'll post pictures on Instagram and on Stitch Mania and things like that, so I'll certainly let you know. But so this will actually go on the table. So this is Lammas. These patterns are found on the Primitive Hare blogspot. I'll put that information down below. There's 8 of them in total, and I've been stitching them and turning them into like little hopes and dreams pockets, so that you can put like a little note of what you would like for the period of time in between each of the 8 Sabbaths, and yeah, and then like little hopes and dreams and wishes and things. So that's why they look like this. They all have little pockets on this one. I've also added, as with all of them, I've added a little charm. So that's some more wheat or corn or some sort of cereal. So the fabric this was stitched on was a 32 count, and it was like a small piece, and I hand dyed it myself. So that's that one, and as I had my sewing machine out and I'd finished the next one, I also fully finished that one too. So this is for the autumn equinox. So this is Mabon, and again it's got a little pocket in it, and I added some silver grapes to that one. So this one's much more about getting the harvest in. Lammas is early harvest, Mabon is let's make sure that all the harvest is in, ready for the winter months. So yeah, now you can see the size difference on those. I mean, I just go by, but this was stitched on 27 count, and again I hand dyed it myself, but it's not much of a difference, but it's enough that this is 32, this is 27, so you know, pretty much like the restoration sampler, the more you go down in size, the smaller the pieces are going to be, and sometimes it's not by much, and other times it does appear that it's a lot bigger than the last one. So I've got notes down here, and I'm trying to look at the screen as well. My fully finishes and my finish, and so I'll continue excuse me, to talk about plans for my autumn table. So autumn obviously is we'll be changing it out from my summer table to more orangey golds and colours like that. So I've obviously picked fabrics to go with Lammas and Mabon that are much more sort of orangey golds and yellows in colour. The flowers and stuff that I'll decorate my tables with will be that way as well. I'll just tone everything down a little bit. I did pick up a couple of things, and I did make a couple of things for the table. So firstly, yesterday, I know these are a little bit, but I like them. I picked these up. These I picked up from a shop in the UK called Primark, and I very rarely go in there because it's not actually in my local town, and I hadn't been shopping somewhere else for a long time. And yesterday I thought, oh, I will just pop in there to have a look at their home and wear, and I found these, which are like copper, hammered copper tea light holders. They have actually got a candle in them at the moment, but obviously you can clear that out once that's been burnt. And they're apples, and I just thought they were really nice, and obviously that bronzy colour as well I think will go really nice. They're not actually the metal, they're just made to look like the metal. But yeah, so this one says it's brambleberry and sage scented candle. But like I said, I like it. I like candles anyway, but I would reuse that, put tea lights in it. But I just thought that was rather nice. I bought 2 of them to go on my table when I'm ready. I feel they fit in with the colours, and they were silly prices really for candles, £3.50 each. So I mean, not as cheap as chips, but not expensive either really. So that was those. Then also, I'll have to re-pick things around. Put myself back. I also bought it's like a little cheapy wood. It's meant to be for the garden. I don't think, to be honest, in British weather, I don't think that'd last a summer because I don't think it's meant to withstand. It's not probably waterproof wood or anything, but that's not what I want it for. I thought it would look nice as a harvest basket, maybe to display, and to put things coming out of, and put some of any small ornaments that I'll stitch. I just thought that it would be quite appropriate. So and it was £1 so I picked it up because that was just a silly price to leave. But the issue that I had, because I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about especially with the month of August, and it's, you know, there's a lot of sort of like the sheaves of corn or cereal or that sort of thing. You can make corn dollies, particularly in the more country rural locations in the UK. There's a lot of festivals to do with the corn dollies and things like that as well. But actually I haven't I haven't really been shopping loads anyway, but I haven't come across any available. Like, I haven't been able to either buy a corn dolly or even get the corn, because it is excuse me, it is just plaiting really. It's a way of plaiting and creating shapes with the cereal that you're using. but I haven't been able to get any, and I'm not going to order it online. It will come in bits, it will be mullet by the time it gets here. So I thought, no, I've got to think of, eventually I may do, like I said, you build these tables slowly, but I'll pick up something, I'll go with the flow and pick up something as and when I can do that. But what do I do in the meantime to sort of symbolise harvest? And so you've got the colours and things. So I was having a think, and obviously I want a budget as well. So, and then I come across what I thought, well, it would be nice to have some fruit representations. Obviously, I now have my apples, but it would, although it'd be really nice to put like the abundance of real fruit, I don't really want to put my stitch in near that, because should there be a little mishap and one go a little bit mouldy, I don't want to be washing or having it near my needlework, to have to worry about that. So I thought, obviously you could go to Early Learning, which is a store in the UK, and you could buy the plastic fruit and things, but they're plastic, and I mean you can buy a really nice ceramic fruit, and but again that's quite pricey, so I'm not going to do that. So I come up with a plan, and I made fabric fruit because I figured that'd be okay, it doesn't go off, I haven't got to worry about things like that. So don't laugh, but here's some of my first attempts of ever making fabric fruit. So this is a pear that I made, and another one. Obviously they're quite true to life in colours. I'm sort of going for a primitive style. This one, not so much, but I thought it'd be quite nice to break up the colours. So you've got, I can't even hold them all together, 3 of the fabric pairs, and I also made some strawberries as well. To be fair, compared to the pears, these look like they might have been genetically modified strawberries because they're huge, but I quite like them and I like the size, and yeah, so, and these strawberries are so easy to make. So I picked, again you don't really get strawberries with patterned strawberries on, but I just thought it would break up the colours a little bit but keep them. And then I've got another 3 about the same. So I've got a very small punnet of strawberries. But I just thought it would be quite nice to sort of, I mean these could actually be used in June and July as well because of Wimbledon and things like that. You've got the summer, the British strawberries in the summer, so you could actually use them on the summer table too. But yeah, I actually enjoyed making those, and it's given me ideas. I might try to make some apples and things. I don't know if I'm going to get time to do it this year, but you know, you can, if I make some, keep adding to my fruit. And the thing is, these don't go off, so they're absolutely fine. And you could, if you wanted to, actually use them as pincushions. There'd be prickly pears then. Boom. But yeah, so you could, obviously I don't think I'm up for that at the moment, but you never know. So yeah, these were quite fun to make. I had a look online and I had a look on Pinterest, and there was some patterns on there, but what I did was that once you've got an idea of how to make them, there are tutorials and things on YouTube, but once you've got an idea of how to make them, then I just adjusted my own shape. I mean, it's like a petal, isn't it, of maybe a poinsettia or something sort of shape, and then obviously done it because that's your 1/4 inch seam allowance, and yeah, and then literally there's 6 pieces that you sew together and it creates that pair. So yeah, I mean, the reason these are all patterned and stuff is because I used a bit of acid-free card that I had, so I figured it'd be stronger than the paper, so I can reuse these again. I used them for the 3. I'll put these somewhere safe and I can reuse them again if I want to make more pairs. So that's my plans for my autumn table. So as I said, I haven't got it set up yet. Normally I would do, but because I'm repainting the house, I'm figuring also that technically this month, the end of this month, but as I go through each room, if I haven't got a lot of needlework on the walls, but if I have, then what I'll do is that I'll show them in the next video, because as they're off the wall, I'll show you then, and then when they go back on after I finish painting it, then it means I haven't got to go all around the house. There's only like 2 pieces, there's not lots, so but I'll save that for next month. So that's something that you could look forward to if you so choose. So my August focus piece would be, following the Stitch Mania sales as I do, would be all creatures great and small. So I've used a current whip for that, and that is Sleepy Hollow by Glendon Place. So I'm actually now, I completed this border because I did technically start it a week early because I finished that restoration sampler, so I picked this up. I really would like to get this finished this year. I've discovered I've made this more difficult for myself, so it's entirely up to you, but it's a heads up. According to the pattern, there is a lot of backstitch. Now the pattern recommends that you backstitch at the end after you've done all your stitching. I don't hate backstitch. The thought of almost going back and redoing a project to put backstitch in is not appealing to me, so I backstitch as I go. I've done that with a few projects that require backstitching, but for some reason, and I don't know why I've done it, and I didn't notice it until 2 days ago, all of these, let me just move that pen, make sure, these pumpkins, bats and skulls are backstitched around the outside, and in the pattern they're backstitched. What they're not is backstitched around the eyes and nose and mouth in some cases. But I have been backstitching that. I don't know why I've done that, but I've literally done it all the way around, so that is kind of more backstitch than is necessary. I actually quite like it. I think it makes it stand out, the shapes stand out a bit more. But if you are doing this pattern, which I know some people are or are intending to, you don't actually have to backstitch on the inside. The pattern doesn't ask you to do it. I don't know why I did it, but now I've done it, I've got to continue to do it. There's not too much left to go. Obviously it's just the writing. Let me show you the pattern. My beaten up pattern. The writing actually says, "In a grave lies the horseman, his head is at his side, be brave enough to take it, and again by night he will ride." So when you actually look, I haven't got too much more border to do, and then I've got the back stitch. There is a lot of beads all around the border, and I've got some sort of long stitches here to do for the spider webs in the corner. I think there's a couple of beads in his tunic, but not really major. The beads are all in the border. So yeah, because there's only border left, for some reason I've really struggled, and I'm not normally like this with projects, to feel motivated about it, but I want to get it finished so much this year that preferably before Halloween as well would be nice. That what I've done is that I've set myself little targets, so it's like if I'm really not feeling it but I'm stitching, then it's like do at least a bat, a pumpkin and a skull, and then if you want to stitch on something else, feel you can do it guilt-free, but at least you're getting that done. And actually if I did that every time I picked up stitching, then in theory I should get this finished by the end of August, because there isn't actually that much left to do. But as we know, you think, oh, and then all that's left is the beading. But beading can actually take quite a bit of time, and there is quite a few beads in this. So I don't want to sort of leave it until the last minute thinking I haven't got too much to do, and then discover that there's more to it than originally thought. So yeah, this is the project that I'm working on at the moment. So this is one of my favourite fabrics. It's Sparkly's Winter Skies in Opalescent. The actual fabric that Glendon Place recommends is a Picture This Plus fabric called Haunted. Haunted is similar, I think it's slightly lighter and less mottled, much more grey, whereas this is much more blue in person. But I really like this fabric, and I like the fact that the mottling is a little bit harsher and stricter. So yeah, I like this. And this is an opalescent. This the border has got quite a bit of acrylic in it, but you probably can't see it because of the opalescent. I mean, I know glitter doesn't pick up well anyway, but being opalescent anyway, but I mean, it doesn't detract from the piece at all. So it'll be quite blingy. So I'm hoping to get this finished. This is my focus piece for August, and I'm hoping to get this finished this month. Even if it's not fully finished, if it's finished, then that's halfway there. This, I love this needle minder. I know I don't have loads of needle minders, but I know I don't talk about needle minders very often, but this is actually from the Midnight Crafter, so Belinda, really nice. I really like this. I think it suits the piece quite well. So yes, that's my Glendon Place Sleepy Hollow. So that's what I'm working on currently at the moment in August, until it's hopefully finished. I'm not sure how I'm going to fully finish it yet. I was convinced I was going to find a really nice ornate black frame, possibly have a mount board in it, but now I'm not so sure, because, you know, it's a Halloween piece, and as much as I love it, I don't think that I'd want to look at it all the time in my house. But I would enjoy looking at it and get much more pleasure out every time I would have it out for Halloween. So I'm thinking that actually, practically, it might be better to turn it into a wall hanging for space saving issues, and then also because it's a wall hanging, so you can hang it lots of different places. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm thinking about it at the moment, and we'll go from there. So that is that. So that's my Sleepy Hollow. Let's just tick that off. Right, I have a couple of questions, because the lighting is not good today, but so maybe another time. But I was going through my fabric stash, and I've noticed that I've got quite a few hand-dyed fabrics, mainly Sparkly's fabric and hand-dyed, and I know some people do like to see fabric, it's not so much haul because I already own them, but like your fabric stash and things, and I don't like to sort of, I mean, I like looking at them, but I've never really done that and shown what I've actually got. But you know, if people are interested in anything, they want to see what a selection, I mean, in certain things I don't really have much of a selection at all, but in other things I do. So if there's anything that you are interested in seeing, then please do comment and let me know, and I'll endeavour to try and show you. But what I'll do is that I'll make them separate videos, so if people aren't interested, then they don't have to be subjected to the haul or stash. So that is nearly it, or it may be it for some of you. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is a design that I've spoken about before, and I haven't finished it, but I feel that I'm going to sort of give you my thought process and the history behind the design. If you're not interested in seeing my design, you're only sort of interested in current designers and things like that, and what's already out there, then I thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your support. Obviously if you like the video, then it's always good to see a thumbs up as well as a lovely comment. That's great. And I will see you at the end of this month in August to hopefully have a finish of Sleepy Hollow, which would be really good, and maybe a fully finish of Bride. That'd be good to actually get that framed, but we will see. So thank you very much for watching. If you are not interested in hearing about my design, and I will see you soon. For those of you that are interested in seeing my thought process, I'm so in awe, and I adore so many of the designers that are out there. I think there's so many, even the ones that aren't necessarily my style. You know, there's a lot of work that goes into this, and I'm sort of appreciating that more and more and more. The more I've come up with ideas for certain designs and then tried to put them to paper. And it's also knowing your own skill level set, and also knowing learning how to translate certain like drawings into cross stitch. So it's a whole learning process. It's raining. It's a whole learning process at the moment, but I thought I would show you one of the pieces that I was working on. So for those of you that are I don't know how far this kind of travels, so I'm not sure, so I don't want to appear being ignorant. I know most of Britain will know this song, or certainly of my generation, and probably a bit younger, maybe 18 and younger, maybe not, but that's, you know. Obviously you've got lots of nursery rhymes and things like that, and with a lot of nursery rhymes like the Grimm's fairy tales and things, there's underlying messages and stories. So what I'm going to do is embrace my inner Stitch Bliss corner, hi Mary Rose, and talk to you about a design that I wanted to do, and in the process of finding sort of, oh, well, why I'm here, because I know this song, but why I'm here, let's find out the history and the interpretation. I found out loads of information, and I just thought that some of you might be interested in hearing what that has to do with anything. So let's start at the beginning. There's a sale coming up in October with Stitch Mania, which is called Around the World in 80 Days. And it's a sale to do with travel. As with a lot of Stitch Mania sales, they're very open, so you can interpret it as a sale to do with travel, or sales that are place related, or, you know, this sort of thing. And I thought, oh well, let's have a look in my I didn't have anything in my current whip rotation at the time, and it was like, let's have a look and see what I've got available in my stash, because I never go and buy a pattern to do a sale. As such, I have to have it in my stash, and then I can take part in the sale. And so I did find one, and I may still do it if I get this finished before. But I did find one, and it mentioned the word London, and it was the nursery rhyme Pussycat Pussycat. So if you don't, I'm not going to sing because I wouldn't put anybody through that torture. But obviously the nursery rhyme goes, Pussycat, Pussycat, where have you been? I've been to London to look at the Queen. Pussycat, Pussycat, what did you see there? I see a little mouse under a chair. Yeah, that one. So obviously it mentions London, so I thought, oh, that's bonus, you know. So I'll stitch that. And sort of within that thought process, I was thinking, you know, actually, I'm wondering what else is out there, you know, and I'm proud to be British, and I'm proud to be English in equal measure. So at the end of the day, I like my culture, and I like looking at our history and stuff like that. So I thought, well, what else is out there that, you know, could represent my country more, or places. And I thought of the song, now showing my age, but I know my brother knows this. I know my husband kind of knew it, but being a boy, he wasn't that interested in playing it. But there's an old song called Oranges and Lemons. Now, it actually refers to the bells of London. Now I used to play it, and we're talking infants, infant school, like so from the age of like 4 up to, what is it, 11. So infants and juniors. And the way you play the game, for those of you that may not have heard the song, because the only reason I'm thinking that you may not have heard the song in other countries necessarily is because it's about Bells of London, so I can't see why you would necessarily, another country might not be interested in singing the Bells of London, right? But so again, I'm not going to sing, but the actual poem or nursery rhyme is oranges and lemons, say the bells of St Clement's. I owe you, no, let me, you owe me 5 farthings, says the bells of St Martin's. When will you pay me, says the bells of Old Bailey. When I grow rich, says the bells of Shoreditch. When will that be, says the bells of Stepney. I do not know, says the great bell of Bow. So there's 6 bells there. So that's 6 of the bells of London that they're singing about. Obviously the bells being in churches. And then there's a bit that when you're playing this song, you're reciting the rhyme. You need at least 6 people to play this game. And 2 of you are forming an arch. So that's how you'd play it. So you'd form an arch, and they'd run in pairs. So obviously the more people you've got, the funner it is, right? And you go through in pairs the arch, and you sing the song, Oranges and Lemons, says the bells of St Clement's, right? And then as soon as you get to the end, it says the great bell of Bow, and it goes, here comes a candle to light you to bed. Here comes a chopper to chop off your head, because kids are lovely like that. And then you would do the chip, chop, chop. And then the last man's dead. And what it is that you're trying to run through, you're still running through the arch that's being formed by 2 people. And as they do in the chip, chop, whoever gets caught in the last bit, the last man's dead, those 2 form the arch, and you redo the song. So that's the playground thing. So obviously it's not something you would do later on in your school days, particularly. It's something that you sung as kids. I sung the 6 bells. I struggled with the last 2. When I was rethinking it, I thought, oh, what's the last 2 bells? I struggled with those. But I remembered at least 4 of them. I've spoken to my son, my stepson, and he's 19, and he's got no idea what I'm talking about. When I said about oranges and lemons, I spoke to my husband, and he knew the song. But he didn't. He was like, I think I'd struggle to remember it, and I didn't really play it at school. So, but he knew of it, and he knew the game. So I would say it's fizzling out as the generations are going down. In regards to the actual history, embracing the inner Stitch Bliss corner. In regards to the actual history of the song as such, they believe that, well, it was found in a book, like a bit like a Mother Goose book. A compendium of stories, not necessarily written by the same author, so it's a compendium. So these exist already in the world. In 1779, I think it was. So they knew that this song existed then. So they can trace it back to 1779, but they actually believe it originated a lot earlier, which we quite possibly could have done, around 1660, which is ironically the sort of time of Charles II. So, and they believe it did that because some of the bells, some of the churches, therefore bells, that the song's referring to, some of those churches were burnt down in the Great Fire of London, which happened in 1666. So that's why they think the song could predate, obviously, its first publication as being made reference to in 1770, but it could actually predate that, obviously, because it's a nursery rhyme, as many do. So this, I wanted to make it a little bit prim, because as I was reading up the history and the story of some of the bells and the poem or song, some of it's quite dark. So I kind of got more of a feel for it to be prim. So this is where I'm at so far. I haven't done all of it yet, but I'm kind of getting there. So this is on 32 count, and obviously it's backwards on my screen. So you've got oranges and lemons, say the bells of St Clement's, and I've stitched a little orange, and I think I'm going to move this ampersand over and stitch a lemon here. So if I take you to that bit, so say the bells of St Clement's, in reference, what that actually means is St Clement's Church was near, I'm just looking, near one of the wharves as in like docks, where we'd get a lot of citrus, oranges and lemons. So it's the bells of St Clement's. So that's the reference, that's the tie-in with the church there. Then, you owe me 5 farthings, say the bells of St Martin's. The reference to St Martin's is obviously St Martin's was a church down Martin's Lane. We're really imaginative with names sometimes, in London particularly. So you owe me 5 farthings, say the bells of St Martin's. In reference to that, what they're saying is 5 farthings before the decimal. We had decimalisation in 1973, 4, where basically we now use penny, pence, pound. Pre-decimalised, there was penny, pence, pound, but there was also farthings, halfpennies, eightpennies, which all had different meanings too. So that was before decimalisation. I'm struggling with that word today, aren't I? So you owe me 5 farthings, say the bells of St Martin's. St Martin's is a church. It's still there. It was burnt down, as a lot of these churches were, and most, not all, were put back after the Great Fire of London anyway. So 5 farthings, say the bells of St Martin's. Yeah, so that was down Martin's Lane. Yeah, like I said, really inventive we are. So in reference to the farthings, it's because at the time it was believed that St Martin's Lane, or for a long time, is where moneylenders, that road, Martin's Lane, if you needed money and from a loan shark, then that's where the moneylenders were. So that's probably why you owe me 5 farthings, which is probably not what they borrowed, because that's what loan sharks do, but is why that reference is there. I haven't finished the rest of it, and I'm actually only doing 4 of the 6 bells because I wanted it to fit on a fat quarter. But the next bit is, when will you pay me? Say the bells of Old Bailey. Now what's interesting with the bells of Old Bailey is that the Old Bailey's never had a bell. I don't know whether you've heard made reference to it, because it's usually big criminal cases and things that are done there. Notorious ones and things, but the Old Bailey is a court, and it's down Bailey Street, is it? I can't remember, because everyone calls it Bailey Street. Yeah, everyone just says it's the Old Bailey, so that's why it's called the Old Bailey. But yeah, it's actually down Bailey Street. Like I said, really inventive with names, and but it's a courthouse, and it has been for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Not far from the Old Bailey is Newgate Prison. That's still in operation, and that's been in operation for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So basically the principle with the Old Bailey, and what's quite interesting, is that the Old Bailey's never had a bell. So what was they referring to in the song? And it does get slightly more complicated, because the prison, I suppose, quite handy if you've been in prison and you've got to go to court, then you're not far from the court, from the prison, literally to the courthouse. Newgate Prison did have a bell, but it didn't have a bell in the time frame that this was done, and that's because there was a church opposite called, let me just check, originally it was called to the Church of the St Sepulchre without Newgate. And what that would do is pretty much, or was pretty much, opposite Newgate Prison and the courthouse. And what that would do, obviously, we stopped capital punishment in this country in the 1960s, I believe. Might have been the last one. But before then, obviously, you could be hung. We had capital punishment, and you would get, originally going right back, you would be taken to the hanging tree at Tyburn, which isn't actually a tree, just for the record. It was like a structure that could hold up to 20 victims or prisoners, which way you want to look at it, at a time. But that was called the hanging tree, and that was at Tyburn, which is now Hyde Park, Marble Arch. Tyburn's not really referred to anymore. It's not a reference, but that's because there's a river Ty there, Tyburn. But I'm trying to bring it back, so to keep it to the point. But if you was to be executed, it was done on a Monday morning. Maybe that's why people hate Mondays, I don't know. And it was done on a Monday, and you would it would be signalled by the death knell, and the death knell was them ringing the bell, a church bell. And that would be, if you had already been sentenced to death, you knew it was Monday, and you knew that when that bell went, they'd be coming to get you, and to take you to be hung. Now, as I said, the Old Bailey and didn't have a bell. Newgate Prison did have a bell, but later on, so not when this was being referred to, it installed a bell, because the church wasn't there no more, so that's probably why it got its own bell. But basically, yeah, this church would do the death knell, as it was near Newgate, and Old Bailey would do the death knell for the prisoners. And it changed its name. I mean, this is how old these churches go back. It changed its name during the Crusades. Now, the Crusades were like 1400, I think. Yeah. So, you know, some of these churches go back so far in history, and which is why I'm finding it difficult to really try and cancel this down to make sense. But it changed its name to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and it became a Templar church. So for those of you that may be unaware, the Knights Templar were Crusaders, and they were pretty noticeable because of the sort of tabards that they wore and their shields, which were white with the red cross. And the idea of they wasn't just British, you had French Templars and all different, and it was to protect the road to Jerusalem in Christendom, for pilgrims. That was the idea. Obviously there was wars between the Muslims and the Christians at that time, and blah blah blah, so but we're not getting into that debate. I'm just saying that is obviously part of both of our histories. So it's so yeah, you had the Templars, and it was a Templar church, and it was a Templar church because it was actually a handy meeting point, because it was near one of the gates of London to get out of London to be able to go on your crusade. So it made sense that that church was there. So yeah, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre does have, or did have, links to Templars. There's lots of churches, particularly in Essex as well, but actually all over England, where I think there might even be in Scotland as well, but I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, where there's obviously big links with the Templars. If you're into Dan Brown and the what was the first book called? The Da Vinci Code and all that sort of thing, then it makes a lot of reference to the Templars and things. Take it with a bit of a pinch of salt, but some of it is relevant. Not far from where I'm currently living now, me and my husband, there's a Cressing Temple Barns. There were Temple Barns, Templar Barns and things. There's some places that still, particularly that I know locally, that still have quite a big Templar link. There's not Templars there, as far as I'm aware, but you can see that there's been a Templar influence around. So that can be quite interesting. My husband does a lot of work for Inner Temple in London, which is actually where all the barristers are, and that was actually featured in the film. I think it's in the first film of the Da Vinci Code, where I think he's saying that where they're trying to find the Templar churches, and that's what I'm saying. There's still quite a heavy link with the Crusades and the Templars even in London, and surrounding counties. So it went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and they used to do the death knell for the executions from the prisoners from Newgate that had been condemned in the Old Bailey. So that's the reference to the Old Bailey. When will you pay me, says the bells of Old Bailey, is what that will say. So the bells of Old Bailey. And that's because Newgate prison was not only for notorious crimes such as murder, rape and those sort of things, but also debtors. It was a debtors prison. So hence the when will you pay me, says the bells of Old Bailey. So that's where that comes from. The next one, which I haven't done is yet, which is When I Grow Rich, says the bells of Shoreditch. Now the When I Grow Rich bit was to do with a church. It's referring to St Leonard's Church in Shoreditch. Now, not so much now because the whole of London is expensive, but obviously you may have seen, especially those of you that are interested in watching things like Jane Austen, Dickens maybe, certain people refer to things as Cheapside, and that's because there was a poorer, cheap side of London. And that sort of thing, and people turning their nose down at it and all that, depending on what class she was in. And well, Shoreditch, up until very recently, is going quite a lot of rejuvenation, and it's come a bit hip and trendy. But before then, has always been seen as a bit of a rundown area. And Shoreditch was also where there was a lot of actors' church. Well, Shoreditch St Leonard's has an actors' graveyard, so an old actors' graveyard. That's not uncommon. I don't know, but that's not uncommon in London. For those of you that have ever been to Covent Garden, you've got St Paul's, not the big cathedral. There's at Covent Garden. There's a church called St Paul's. There's churches all over London, but sometimes it's hard to see them because it's just the way it is. But there's a church of St Paul's, and that's actually an actor's church, and it does actually say on it, it's a little blue plaque saying that the graveyard was an actor's graveyard. So in reference to Shoreditch, obviously you've got to think it's quite a poor area. It was obviously later on, it was where the workhouses really started to take hold. Was put in that area. It was where the down and outs and people that were pretty much homeless and was so hungry they'd do anything would be found. And unfortunately, amongst those people, and sometimes are the actors, because in those days, unless you had a big name and you was making it big, it was always chasing that dream. And obviously some of them did, and some of them done really well, and others didn't. And that's the side of entertainment, isn't it? And Shoreditch, what did have part of it, was also an actor's church. So when it refers to, when will you pay me, says the bells of Old Bailey, when I grow rich, says the bells of Shoreditch. And that could be, they believe, has reference to, this idea chasing the dream, and also the fact that everybody in Shoreditch, it was literally just like, please just give me some bread or whatever, and I'll work ridiculous hours just to be fed and have a dry floor to sleep on instead of out on the street, and this sort of thing. So that's where the concept tied in with the rhyme. Now, I'm not going to do the last two bells because I'm not going to fit them on this fabric, so I decided to just do the four. if you're not bored already, if the next thing that, I mean, I think it looks quite nice like that, and I'm going to actually put in, obviously, I'm going to put in a Templar shield here. And when I come into when I grow rich as the Bells of Shoreditch, I'm actually going to put a comedy and tragedy mask so that you get the idea with the actors and things. But there's not too many drawings on here. It is mainly just the wording and how I've done it, because my intention was always to add lots of charms to this. I want this to be like sort of mismatched and bitty. So I will show you, I hope it doesn't rustle too much, but I'll show you my plan of action. But I can't put them on there until I finish stitching it. So here's some bells. I don't know if you can see. See those? So you get 2 bells there. So there'll be 2 of these charms that will be added to, excuse my hands, look blistering, because of the heat that we've had. Yeah, there'll be 2 of these, so that would represent the 4 bells. I've also intend to add one of these, which is the Scales of Justice for the Old Bailey. And I also intend to add these. So there's not an awful lot of charms that will be added to it, but obviously I can't add them until in embellishments until you finish the stitching. So if you're going back to 1660, going back to the decimalisation, farthings were being used before then as a form of currency, but obviously they changed, because that's what currency does. It changes if they're going to stamp the head on it, what's it made of, this, that, blah, blah, blah. To get a farthing dating back to in the 1600s, they're collector's pieces, so no. But you can pick up farthings, or I could get farthings, at a half reasonable price. It depends on because remember these have been in circulation, so they've been battered. Half reasonable price. Around sort of the later period, sort of, I think, around, yeah, the turn of the century, like, well, 1900s and up. So you generally, that sort of later time, you would generally get them with either a little wren on, because it's Britain's smallest bird. See it? Little wren. So this is an actual farthing. Or you get them with the Britannia. So Lady Britannia. Yeah. And that's also a farthing. So depending on when they were in circulation. So I didn't want to put 5 farthings actually on it, so my plan of action was to put 1 farthing on and put it in a little pendant. I don't know whether I can hold it like that and attach it. So put 1 farthing on, and then I've got these same size buttons as the farthings in roughly the same colour, because obviously they're all different colours where they've been in circulation, and as much as I've tried to clean them up, you can't clean them up too much. So you've got these buttons that are roughly the same sort of size as the farthings. So my intention is to stitch 4 of these buttons, and then obviously the farthing with the pendant on the piece as well, so that way you've got a real farthing and 4 kind of meant to look like farthings, but that makes sense. So they're the only embellishments that I was going to plan to put on it, because I don't want it to be too heavy. And my plan of action is, because I'm a little bit twisted, is that of course I've got to turn it into a bell pull, because all puns intended. like, you know, you just have to. But you could frame it, I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't, but yeah. So that is my design. If you've got any questions about anything that I've said, or I'll try and help you out with any of the history that I've looked into and stuff, I hope you found it interesting. I haven't bored you all to death. I hope to see you at the end of the month, and it may be finished and I may be able to show that to you as well. But yeah, thanks guys, and thanks for the encouragement. I've had a few people comment saying, like, you know, oh, I'm really interested to see what you've got to design. So thanks very much. I've really enjoyed the process. It's a learning process, but I've enjoyed it, and I've got some other ideas of stuff that I want to stitch as well. So yeah, I've enjoyed it, so I'd like to hear your feedback and your thoughts on that. So yeah, thanks ever so much for your support, and I will speak to you soon. Bye guys, take care.